So here I am today again cutting beans. These are a bit another variety, but a longer variety, a longer maturity than the one that I cut back at home. This is on the other farm. This farm is called Modderbilt. My neighbors over there, their farm's called Modderbilt farming. So they've got some poultry over there and what do you call it, broilers, where KFC comes from. So, but yeah, so this farm, it's been really difficult and dry this year, and we did have a bit of an issue controlling some of the weeds. You'll see there's some, I think it's palm amaranth, what you call it, and they're starting to turn resistant onto Roundup if not sprayed early enough. Yeah, well, this corner I just think I just missed it, and you can see there where the beans end, and there where the weed starts. So that's why it's important to keep your soil covered. If it's not covered with a crop, it's going to be covered with weeds. So, but yeah, the yield so far, I'm not going to show you the yield. It is surprisingly good with the low amount of rain that we had. I'm really thankful for that. And it just shows you that even though, so there was a wheat cover crop on here, and I think with a bit earlier planting date, correct maturity, and I think maybe a bit of added moisture from the organic matter, even though you can see the field, there's some weeds that we did kill off eventually, but still, well, it looks shitty, but the yields are still quite respectable. I did not expect that at all. Okay, so combine's full, and I'm just waiting on a truck so they can empty it out. So I decided I'm just going to take a walk some of the cornfields. So this farm, the field where I'm standing in at, this farm is known as a sand farm, and apparently no-till doesn't work here, but I'm going to show you the cobs on here. So this is corn that's going to be doing 150 to 200 bushels. If I look at what I'm seeing here, which is, I think, way better than what I think some of the other yields is going to be for this area on better soils. But not to boast about it, but just as a proof of principle, no-till does work. And this is the only, I don't have I can't do anything about the soil type, but I am able to manage these soils to such an extent that I can make them productive. So I'm just gonna walk maybe down a bit here, and I want to show you how this decarb variety, but look at it's filled all the way to the top. Well, that one over there was some insects that might have eaten a bit of them, but I'm gonna try and hold it steady and just open these ears. These are proper ears. They are really proper ears, and they've got good seed weight. These plants still have some green on them. So, but yeah, and like I said, this is no-till. This is the second or third year of no-till now. It's sandy, it's clay, it's a bit of everything, but the residue cover on here is what makes me ask. I'm just wondering about a few things. I think maybe the biology can still be ramped up a bit, but as far as no-till not working, I beg to differ. These are some proper ears. Let me open up this one here. These are proper ears. So yeah, I am thankful for what I am seeing. Being such a dry year, and this shallow sandy soil types, I think my biology and no-till really did its job. These are really making me really wanting to come and pick this corn, but yeah, they're about, I think, maybe another 6 to 8 weeks out. So we started to unload the grain dams. soybeans from the grain dam. And yeah, so there's my brother, truck is in here. So there's like it's an auger, PTO, not PTO, hydraulic driven, and then it pulls it from the middle of that of the grain dam, and that's how we truck them off to where they need to go. Okay, so I'm sitting in my office here for a bit, and what I've did is I imported the yield data on some of the fields that we harvested last week. And now what I do is, so I take a lot of the data and some of the soil testing data that I have, and the tissue sampling data set throughout the season, and I see what correlates to yield. I want to identify what my limiting factors were, and also if there's anything correlating to what actually was yield limiting factors and what was yield creating, or nobody creates yield, you just save yield. So what was the biggest yield saving factors that I had on all of my fields, and not just on one field or on one farm. Now, I try to do it on every field that I have, and then I think that's the aim of the game for me, is to manage every part of every field on its own. There's a lot of variability. I do a lot of variable rate. Well, everything is done variable rate on my farm. We do have a lot of different soil types, even though I don't want to say classed by the human eye, but I'd rather call them different management zones that I do have. And I manage my crops, whether it's soybean, whether it's corn, whether it's sunflowers. I manage my crops to what the potential is on that specific management zone that I've identified. So I run my management zones off of mainly yield monitor data over multi-years worth of analysis. And then I also have like satellite imagery that I try to add to the data set to identify maybe any issues, or just delineate my management zones a bit better. But currently my yield data that does the best job for me. So even though even though my yields aren't that, I don't want to say correct, because it might sound like it's not accurate, but I strive for 99% on my yield monitor. I run an ag leader system, and I'm quite happy with it. So for the fields that we've done so far, I was at a 97.8. So I'm gonna do 2 more calibration loads to make sure that I'm getting better accurate data out of the display. But I'm looking for the tendencies. The tendencies in data, that's the biggest thing for me, because I need to see if I've got a high management zone, and does it correlate to high yield. If I've got a low management zone, does it correlate to lower yields? And so all of that plays a really big role for me, because I base all of my fertility recommendations and some soil sampling off of that. And I'll show you just now, I'll touch on soil sampling. So here in South Africa, we've got a laboratory that I use. It's Envirotech. They're about a 2-hour drive from me, and these are like their bags. I get the bags from them, and they've got a part down here where I write down my the sample ID, or if there's any specific thing that I'm specifically wanting. Otherwise, that's where you name it. So I'll just call it a trouble zone from field 1 or whatever. But like on this field, so I've got these ready to go. Maybe later in the week. Well, if this rain is going to fall, I don't think we're going to be cutting beans. Like this one, I labeled it's the field number and the sample number. So that's going to be field, actually in Afrikaans it's land or land 2, sample ID 24. And so it's based off of grid samples. I've got an app on my phone, app that I created. It's actually quite easy nowadays with all the online AI assisted, call it programming apps, that there is. So with all the knowledge that I had, and that app, it actually helped me quite a lot into creating that sampling app. I'll see if I can maybe add maybe a video of that when I go to sample. and then I catch all those zones. I do the sample zones. I choose 1 hectare, or I think it's 2.5 acres, grid sizes that I prefer to do. And then I take all of that data with the yield data, and I turn that into agronomic, or I try to turn that into agronomic data, workable data, to see what drives yield and what doesn't drive yield. So I've got one example on here of a field now, and I'm just going to switch over to that. Okay, so this is the software that I'm running. So this is Ag Leaders SMS. I hope the cameras line up correctly. So there it shows me that's the harvest data from that field. Already you can see like that signs means I already cleaned up the data. It's never good to use just raw data, so the data has been cleaned and calibrated to what the weight slip said. And now I've got with all of that calibrated, then I ran, I've got quite a lot of analysis. That's analysis functions out of SMS. Well, most of them are in Afrikaans, but I do a lot of comparisons. It's got the built-in agronomic analysis. I've got some equation-based analysis, field trials that I'm running, multi-year analysis. But yeah, so I already ran that correlation on that field. And so now what it shows me is like what drove the correlation between a certain nutrient. Let's go over to this is phosphorus. So it'll now actually show me, how does the this element like phosphorus that was done on a Ep3 extraction, how does that compare or correlate to boron? And I'm not going to explain the coefficient of variance, but you can go and check it up. So actually what it means is the higher, if it's a positive number, it means if the one goes up, the other one will go up. And then if the one goes down, the other one will probably go down. So yeah, so but you can't just look at it as is. This is quite a good indication for me. Or what I'll do is actually shows me that magnesium percentage, not the amount, but the magnesium percentage that I have was negatively correlated to the phosphorus. So there's an element, the magnesium percentage, if it maybe gets too high, it's going to influence my phosphorus levels. And also, if you can see, if my looking at yield, there's yield down on the bottom. So I think if there's a negative correlation, it means I have to go and look into that. And if it says there's a negative correlation into pH, I need to look into that. So now what I'll do is I will just go back, and then I will see what's positively and negatively correlated to one another. And then I go over to Excel. So this is not that current fields data, but what I'll do is I will go and I will have a look at all those different levels, at where they were, where they're at, and then I will take out some certain spots, soil sample IDs and different yield zones, and then I will just see what those levels were and if there is any correlation, because sometimes you can have like the one in the middle at a 2.5 ton area, that's like a 35-40 bushel. You can see there was a decent amount of calcium, potassium, but the numbers are looking good, but there wasn't actually any yield coming off of that. So now I have to go and see what was the limiting factor on there. So this is actually from a field that I did last year. I'm going to use the same template for the field for the yield data from this field. Well, down there at the bottom, let me just create a new yield map. So now there you can see the how the yield map looked, the good zones, poorer zones, even more poor zones over there. And now I'm going to dissect all of that. And there you can see we ran yields from 700 kilograms all the way to, well, I don't think we hit a 9.98, but well, never say never. It might be from some of those better spots at the bottom. There was some really decent spots. You'll see there was more than 2 hectares that went above 5 tons. So, but yeah, knowing from the variance in soil and biological and the management zones that I do have, I do reckon that maybe that is because of, I think, a limitation in biological status of the soil. And over there, that is just there's no nutrients up there. So previous years, there was a flood, like water flowing down there, and it eroded all of the topsoil. So I actually have to grow new topsoils. How do you know? How do you grow new topsoil? Well, that is actually where no-till and regenerative air comes in. So, but yeah, that's a challenge over there. But coming back to this data, so I use this type of data to see how it influences yield at the end of the day. And then, yeah, just use all of that to make decisions going forward. See what limited yield and what actually saved the most yield, or what was yield driving factors. Yeah, and if I do get to a point where my head starts to ache, I just look down. So my office, this is my little I call it Didi. It was given to me by one of my friends, Didi, and I appreciate it. Little Didi smiles at me every day and waves. And yeah, but yeah, a lot of screens in my office. For the guys that haven't seen my office yet, some trophies and stuff up there, more trophies. And yeah, this is how my desk usually looks. I've got some soil sampling bags already. That's I've put out for one of the fields, and I can actually show you where that field is. Let me open it up here and get into that field. Those sampling points. So there's that. There they are. All of them are numbered. They're already exported to that app that I did. So that's going to be the first point, and then I'm going to navigate all the way through there and just collect the samples, and then I will do the same that I'm going to do here, and with the yield from that part. So the rest of the field at the bottom, I split that field. There was corn planted in that area, so that's just for the soybean part. And when I finish harvesting the corn, I'll do the corn part as well, and then I'm going to see how the nutrient change was from the previous year had corn, and how it changed from corn soybean rotation to corn on corn, and how much the composition of the soil changed, because I do have uh, data from the soil sampling data from last year from the same field. So now I'm going to see how much change in nutrient levels also there has been, and try and see if I can see if the nutrient removal was consistent on the beans. So I know a lot of guys have asked me to give an explanation on how SMS works over here in South Africa, and maybe uh, if I need to do maybe a course like that, it's just the thing is my time is usually on the short end. I've got a lot of stuff that I'm attending to, and that needs to be done. But if you guys think I need to do it, please comment, and I might think I'll prioritize my time to put out maybe a session on just explaining SMS. It does seem a bit overwhelming when you the first time that you start to use it, but it's actually not that bad. Once you get the hang and the used to it and the hang of it, you will see why it's, I think, the best software package for doing your yield data analysis, or not just yield data analysis, just prescriptions and everything, all your precision farming data that you do collect. Why it's one of the best, I think, in the business.